The Update tab is where you sync transactions from your linked accounts, assign transactions to an associated income, saving, or spending category, and see how you did for the month compared to your goals. In this video, we'll go into some detail and provide common examples. But if you want the short version, everything we describe in this video can be summarized by 3 basic guidelines. And don't worry if you can't remember these. Each guideline is easily summarized by hovering over the question mark icon next to the relevant account type. Here they are. Number 1. Savings and checking account transactions can be categorized by any label, including income, spending, or saving, or they can be ignored. Number 2. Credit account transactions should all be categorized with a spending label, or they can be ignored. Number 3. Transactions that are transfers between accounts should be given a label in one account only and ignored in the other, or these transactions can be ignored in both accounts. We'll provide a bit more detail about why in a moment, but in short, this guideline ensures you don't do any double counting. Now, let's walk through your workflow from the top of the page to the bottom and cover some common scenarios. At the top of the Update tab, you'll select the month you're updating your transactions for. You only need to update your transactions once a given month has completed. But if you like to make updates more frequently, you can start categorizing your transactions as soon as the month begins. Now that you've selected the month, you'll sync transactions for the month across your linked accounts. As you would expect, you'll see transactions for each account, including the date it took place, where the transaction came from, and the amount, which could be a positive or negative value. Let's talk about savings accounts first. Generally speaking, savings accounts are the accounts you've dedicated for savings. Most commonly, this will be for things like an emergency fund or short or medium-term financial goals. Savings accounts are easily identified by the purple savings dot next to the account name. This is an indicator that most of the time, transactions in this account will get a savings label. The savings labels you apply will be associated with one of your savings line item goals you set up on the Plan tab. Positive transactions will get you closer to your goals, and negative transactions with the same label will pull you back from your goal. For example, let's say you make an automatic transfer of $300 a month to your savings account, and you call this emergency savings, since you are in the process of building up your emergency fund. When you sync your transactions, you'll see that $300 transfer and will apply the emergency savings label. You are now $300 closer to your emergency savings goal. But suppose your car breaks down. To help pay for the repairs, you transfer $200 out of your savings account. In order to reflect that you are now $200 further away from your emergency savings goal, you apply that negative transaction to the same category. Therefore, for the month, after your $300 transfer in and your $200 transfer out, you are plus 100 and that much closer to your emergency savings goal. Now let's talk about checking accounts. Transactions in checking accounts will typically be a mixture of income items and spending items. While it's possible a transaction in your checking account could get a savings label, if you have a dedicated savings account, this is not typical. The reason is that you'll account for savings transactions in your savings account, where they show up as deposits that get you closer to your savings goals. Another transaction type in your checking account you'll typically select to ignore are payments to your credit card. The reason is that assuming you sync that card's transactions in MoneySwell, you'll already have accounted for that spending when you track that previous month's spending with that credit card account. However, if you pay your credit card in full every month and you're not tracking categories within your card spending, you can opt to forego syncing any credit card transactions and just track the total credit card payments that come out of your checking account. Now let's talk just about credit card transactions that show up in your credit card account. All transactions in credit card accounts will be categorized with a spending label, or they will be ignored. If you don't track spending categories within your credit card and only care about your total credit card spending, you can apply the same spending label to all purchases and credits to the account. And again, just like with a checking account, you'll typically select to ignore for payments to the account because you'll already have tracked those purchases in last month's spending. If you carry a card balance, that is, you haven't paid off the full balance in any given month, your credit card company will charge you interest on that balance. While that interest is real spending and should be tracked, it might not show up as a credit card transaction line item. If that's the case with your credit card, the easiest way to track that spending on interest is to continue to ignore credit card payments and add a manual transaction equal to the purchased interest charged amount shown on your credit card statement for that month. Now let's zoom in on the concept of the default category. For each account, you have the ability to label all positive transactions and all negative transactions with a default category. Selecting the default category will label every transaction within the given group. Here's another way to think about it. If you don't track detailed categories, you're essentially tracking total inflows and outflows at the account level, and can therefore assign an account category as the default for all your transactions at once. As an example, your Chase credit card account could use the category Chase Credit Card Spending and use the default category to track all transactions. If you track just a few spending categories, start by labeling everything with the default category, and then modify just the transactions you want to track more specifically. Using the default category feature is completely optional, but if you track a lot of spending at the account level instead of at a detailed category level, it can save you a lot of time and make updating your transactions take only a few minutes a month. Before we move on to manual transactions and the summary, let's address a common question for linked account transactions. What should I do when my account issues refunds for returned items or other similar credits? The answer is simple. Label those transactions with the same spending category that you originally applied to them. For example, if I bought something at Target for $20 and then returned it, that return will show up as a $20 credit from Target. Since this spending item was originally just labeled with a generic Chase credit card spending label, by using that same label again, it effectively wipes out the previously reported spending for that item. The last transactions part of the Update tab is for manual transactions. These can be line items that summarize multiple transactions from an account you don't download from, or they could be cash transactions if you choose to track your cash. Manual transactions can be labeled with any of the broader income, saving, or spending categories you set up to track. And as previously mentioned, if you have credit card interest payments that didn't come in as transactions, you can add your purchase interest here as a line item. The summary section of the Update tab will show you a visual of your total income, saving, and spending, a breakdown of these items within those broader categories, and an indication of whether or not you achieved your goals for the month. Budget Planner gives you some flexibility to manage your goals. Ultimately, it's this flexibility that will make it a simple system, but that flexibility may also mean it takes a month or two to align your plan and your monthly updates. But once you do, it will be second nature. For most, updates to their budget plan only take a few minutes a month.